Okay. Welcome to a special edition of College Talk Tuesday. My name is Andy Lockwood. Pearl Lockwood not with me this morning. She's on special assignment taking our 10th grader to the DMV for her permit test. Our fourth of four kids going to hit the road, we think. So a little bit of anxiety here in the house, but we seem to have overcome it and found all the required documentation. So I'm expecting a smooth DMV experience, if that's not an oxymoron, for Pearl and Sammy Lockwood. So this is a special edition. It's our last College Talk Tuesday and client-only combo bonus. Here's what you need to be doing now. Workshop every month for our clients only. We give the scoop, the inside scoop on what they need to be doing now, whether they're in 12th, 11th, or 10th or younger grades. And this month, because it's going to be the last one for the year, I thought I would open it up to non-clients also. So if you have any questions about what you should be doing now, just pop them right here in the comment section. And if I don't get to them live today, because this is going to be a very short installment, then I will get in and look at the recording sometime by the end of the week. So let me just see who is with us today. I see Melissa and then Facebook user and Chuck. Good morning. And some anonymous people. Deborah Sperling. Nice. The voice. You should have a nickname. We probably do have a nickname. I don't know what it is, but I'll have to call you that until you tell me your real nickname. And Christina. All right, great. So here's what's on tap for today. 3 topics: financial aid, college interviews, and a bonus topic. No, SAT and ACT cancellations and closures. But again, this is live. If you're with me this morning, 10 o'clock Eastern, December 1st. And if you have any questions, whether live or on replay, pop them right in here. If you're just joining us, just say hi or ask your question. So let's talk about what everyone thinks is at least in the higher education industry, is going to be happening in terms of SATs and ACTs. It looks like there's going to be some more testing center closures. I would bet on that. It may not be across the board. So I just read an article yesterday in Inside Higher Ed, which talks about how even though test scores are required for most financial aid merit aid programs, many and certain schools like all the public universities in Florida still require the test. A lot of schools are test optional, but kids are trying to take the SAT and the ACT as much as possible because they believe it gives them an edge. I agree. A lot of colleges say otherwise, but for reasons I won't belabor here because I've talked about them previously. I think they're super important. So everyone should definitely sign up for multiple sessions of either the SAT or the ACT, in my opinion. In terms of closures, so far in California, 181 testing centers for the SAT are totally shut down. New York, 94 testing centers are closed. Pennsylvania, 53. Massachusetts, 51. And Florida, 26. The next ACT is December 12th. And testing centers are already announcing that they are closing. So 50 more have shut down in California and other states. So you really need to check up until the last minute with the College Board whether your site is actually going to be open on the day of the test, which of course is incredibly stressful for kids about to take these tests. But the other best practice pro tip that I can give is absolutely you have to sign up for multiple exams. Just assume that at least one of the sessions is going to be canceled. No word yet on if and when any of these are going to go online. The ACT has said intermittently and repeatedly that they do plan to offer some of the exams online. That won't be until sometime, according to them, sometime in 2021. So you've got to, there's really no other way to deal with this other than signing up for more tests than you actually think you're going to take, and checking right up until the last minute to make sure your test center is open. All right, let me move on to interviews. So this is a tip really for kids who are in 12th grade, and also kids who are younger who might be having interviews sometime in the next year. Now, there's really two types of college interviews. One is with the admissions offices, which are extremely rare. They pretty much stopped with the rise of the Common Application, because now colleges are bombarded with applications because they accept the Common Application. So there's something like 800 colleges on the Common App. It's not unusual at all for kids to submit 20 schools applications. So it's hard for admissions staff to keep up. They review about 1,000. Each admissions staffer, it reviews approximately 1,000 applications a year at any given college. So they can't possibly interview everybody. So interviews with admissions officers don't really happen much anymore, other than the small schools, like the little 2,000, 3,000 numbers of student schools. What's much more common are admissions, are alumni interviews, not admissions, but alumni interviews. And here's the thing about alumni interviews: they don't really count for anything. So I've prepped probably a dozen or so kids this year for interviews, seniors, and each time I've said to them, look, it's good that you are interviewing because it shows that you're interested. In most cases, these are kids who are applying early decision, so they're already demonstrating interest. However, you're going to be over-prepared by the time that we are done with this session, because even if the alumnus or alumna trashes you, it's not going to really matter. Obviously, you don't want to be in a position where you do something offensive. So just use common sense. Make sure you make eye contact. Most of these interviews are now on Zoom. They used to be at Starbucks or Panera's or whatever, but these days they're either over the phone or on something like this. And you want to make sure that you are prepared to answer some basic questions like, so tell me about yourself. But most of the time, these interviewers are not out to grill you and try to trip you up. It's not like the paper chase, or it's not like a real job interview. They're really just done to benefit not the student, but to benefit the college themselves, because it keeps the alumni in the fold. It keeps them feeling part of the community, and therefore more likely to donate. So a lot of kids get all nervous, and I understand that, because typically, it's the college interview is something they've never done before. So one of my tips is, well, do an interview at a school that you're not really interested in applying to. Use them as sort of a sacrificial lamb. If you're comfortable doing that, I would do an interview at a local, request an interview at a local school where you're probably not going to go. Just use as a warm up interview. But also, like I said, it doesn't really matter what you say, other than that you're being respectful and polite. One of the tips I give, though, is you want to be ready for when they ask you, so do you have any questions for us? You don't want to be sitting there saying, and fumfering around. You need to be prepared. You can't say, no questions, I'm good, I got everything on the website, thanks. So here are a couple of questions that I like. And you have to use your own words and think about, whether you're comfortable, you're feeling comfortable enough to ask a question like this. But one of my favorite questions is something along the lines of, so everything I've researched about XYZ University is amazing. It seems so perfect for me in so many ways. However, to be totally candid, because most of my research has been online, because of the pandemic preventing us from visiting, as I go through website after website, they start to blend in a little bit. It's almost like these websites were designed by one, college marketing company. So how would you say, Mr. Interviewer or Madam Interviewer, how would you say that such and such college is different compared to some of the other schools that kids like me typically look at or consider? Maybe some of the schools that you looked at, when you were applying to college before you decided on this school. The reason I like that question is because what it does is it kind of shifts the power of the interview, and it puts the burden, so to speak, on them to start selling you the reasons why that particular college is so great. So if you ask that question, then you just shut up and you listen. I think that's going to be a good dynamic, because alumni and anyone loves talking about themselves and their choices and their decisions, and sort of justifying those, all the above. So I like that question a lot. So file that one away if you have someone younger. Another question I like a lot is, so I'm thinking about majoring in, ABC. Do you know anything about the students who graduated last year with that major? Like, where are they now, or 2 or 3 years ago? Who did the best? Who didn't do so well? What advice would you give someone like me who's interested in that field, and I'm trying to avoid mistakes that other people before me have made, who things didn't work out so well for them? A lot of times the alumni don't really have such tight knowledge of a particular to be able to answer a question like that. But I think it's a good question also because it shows that you are kind of serious about what you're trying to get out of college. And again, it's asking them for advice. And then if you the student, just shut up and listen, that's also going to be a great dynamic for you as well. So this morning I was following up with a client of mine who interviewed with MIT, and he was very nervous about his interview. He's applying early decision there, and I gave him the same type of advice that I just gave to you. And I said, "So how was the interview?" And he said, "It went well. I definitely needed to hear that it didn't mean much before having the interview. Thank you for that. The lady barely asked me any questions, and sometimes just sat there waiting for me to start talking or continue talking. At the end, she sent me the notes she wrote, and she told me to fix any factual errors or add anything I wanted before she sent it to MIT." And that is kind of an exaggerated version of the advice that I was giving, but I can tell you from Pearl's experience, who does, she currently does not, but she has done alumni interviewing for Cornell, and one of her best friends, Cindy, from growing up, and a lot of people that I know who do these types of interviewing. Most of the kids they interview don't get in, and in some cases, none of them get in, even though they love them and they give them favorable ratings and all that. So they're really not useful at all in terms of helping or hurting your chances of getting into a particular school. But the fact that you do them, that's important. Just the fact that you're showing up and engaging in that activity to demonstrate interest. So that's my segment on interviewing, and I see some questions coming in here, so keep them coming. I'm now going to switch to talking a little bit about financial aid, but let me just see if I have any questions right here. Deborah wants the nickname Deb. That is clever. I will try to remember that. What should a sophomore be doing now? Okay, I'm going to get into that. And Christine, yeah, they just canceled the 12.5 ACT. Yeah, it's annoying. Oh, that's a good one. Asking what their favorite spot on campus was. He says that the alumni would start waxing sentimental and tell stories, which was cool. Yeah, that's a good example too. I mean, I usually like the more nitty gritty substantive stuff, but that is a great question, and thank you for sharing that one, because I never would have offered that, but that's great too. Anything to get them talking. Again, switching the power dynamic of the interview, not to read too much into this, but to get them selling the school to you. I think that's super important. All right, so let me talk a little bit about financial aid. So for seniors right now, there's been a fair amount of financial aid form applications activity going in. Not everyone is filed yet. There's some deadlines today, actually, and then there's later deadlines. But for the most part, most early deadlines were November 1, November 15th. Now what happens after you file, and this is kind of hard to explain, because if you've never gone through it, but if, let's say you apply to 10 or 12 or 15 colleges, most of those schools are going to have multiple follow-up requests, which is why Pearl says in financial aid, when you file, it's not when it starts, it's not when it ends, like when you're filing a tax return. I was confusing those two. When you file a tax return, you dump all your stuff on your accountant. He gives you a draft. You say, okay, fine. And then he files it. Then you're done. In financial aid, that's not when you're done. That's when it starts, because if you have 10, 12, 15 colleges asking you for additional information, then it gets to be quite a lot of stuff to handle. So one of the tips I need to give you is, when you get an email saying we are missing information, don't panic. It doesn't mean that you have failed to provide something initially. It means that they didn't get everything they need to make a proper evaluation of the resources that you have to be able to pay for college. But those resources, those questions may not be about stuff that should have been included in the initial filing, because the financial aid forms only ask you about certain bits of information, but sometimes those questions trigger additional requests. So just because you're getting a notice that you're missing information, such as a student's non-filing statement, meaning a kid, even though they earned income, they didn't file a tax return, that doesn't mean it's missing, that you failed to provide it. It just means that, oh, we need this to paper our file. That's one tip. The next tip is sort of inherent in that first tip, is you've got to monitor your emails. Even though there's going to be a lot of activity there, you can't just blow it off and let it pile up. You've got to keep an eye on your inbox. Even if these types of requests are not really substantive, such as, we didn't get your FAFSA, or we see that you applied to XYZ University, now it's time to file your FAFSA, and you could be panicking, thinking, wait a minute, they said that Pearl or somebody told me that our financial aid forms were already filed. Why are they sending me this email? Well, always at the bottom of those emails, there's a disclaimer almost that says something like, by the way, if you've already filed your FAFSA, then you can ignore this message. So that's one thing. The second thing is, bear in mind that anytime you file, if you're doing this yourself or if you're working with us, we file for you, you get receipts of every filing, of every to that email, that proves that the FAFSA and CSS profile and any of the forms that are required were sent on such and such a date. So if you get a panicky email saying, hey, it's time to file your FAFSA, first thing I would do is go back and look at your receipts, print them out, keep them in a file, keep them in a binder, something like that. I like hard copies because computers go down. Or if you go on a college's website and they assigned you a portal, and you log in, and the day after we filed, or a week after we filed, or you filed, it says that there's still missing information. Again, don't panic, because you have a filing receipt. Colleges do not upload stuff from the FAFSA and the College Board with the CSS profile instantaneously. They take time to do so. So again, it's very easy to panic and think things are missing, and I don't blame you, because a lot of these emails are very alarming and cortisol spiking. But if you have receipts, then you're in great shape. And if there's never any questions and you're working with us, of course, you can reach out to Pearl. But 99.9% of the time, it's just the college is being a little slow in downloading your information from the FAFSA and the CSS profile, or it's just a blast email from the college or the FAFSA that's asking for stuff that you may have already provided. But you still have to read everything. I'm just advising you not to panic. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the calendar for negotiating awards, because I think this year is going to be even bigger than ever for negotiating. And there's really two timelines. So when you get into a college and that offers merit aid, most of the time they give that merit aid offer either simultaneous with the offer admission or a few days later. And if you don't get something a few days later, I would reach out to the admissions office and say, hey, I was just curious about our eligibility. My son, have your kid do it. I'm just curious about my eligibility for any type of merit scholarships. Most of those offers come, like I said, either simultaneously or a few days after the admissions letter comes. So that could be anywhere in, like now. I've had some kids get in to several colleges and receive offers, or it could happen in March or April. Now, contrast that with need-based financial aid offers. Those typically come in March and April only, unless you've applied early decision. So if you applied early decision to a school, you might hear back today or sometime early this month. And then the need-based financial aid award will come a few days after that, typically, if you get in. If you don't get in, then you're not going to get any financial aid award, of course. But for the most part, need-based awards don't come until March or April, which really doesn't give a lot of time to negotiate, but it's plenty of time in my experience because most housing deposits are due May 1st. So when's the best time to negotiate? My feeling and my experience is that the best time is once you've gotten all the offers back that you're expecting to get, because you want to have as much of a position of strength as you can possibly display, meaning if you have multiple competing offers, or I should say offers from competing colleges, it's great to be able to display those and say words to the effect of, look, you're my number one top choice school. However, my parents are forcing me or encouraging me to consider these other schools solely due to financial reasons. If there's any way at all that you can meet or even possibly exceed these other offers, then we will rush in our housing deposit. So that helps when you have multiple offers. If you just do a onesie twosie, I think you're going to self-sabotage a little bit. So there's no rush, even though a lot of colleges want you to think that they're running out of money. But I prefer to have as many arrows in the quiver as possible. Now, the other grounds for negotiating are mostly for need-based awards. And what college financial aid offices will consider are special circumstances, meaning, for example, kids who graduated in 2021 this year, their financial aid applications were predicated on their income from 2019, from 2 years ago. So coronavirus happened in March of 2020 and caused a lot of layoffs or drops in income for businesses. So that's not reflected on the financial aid forms. So that's a classic special circumstance, which is pretty much, in a nutshell, all about showing them, the financial aid officers, other stuff that didn't fit in the boxes of the financial aid application. Even though in the CSS profile, which is the more complicated financial aid form required by about 400 colleges, there is a brief ability to disclose certain special circumstances. In my experience, most of the time, these colleges just blow that off, and you're going to have to mount a formal appeal once you get your financial aid award. Again, mostly March and April. Earlier if you're playing early decision, but mostly not till the springtime. So that's one special circumstance. Is a huge drop in income that the college didn't know about. There are many, but drop in income is really one of the main ones. Another one is unusual expenses. So you could have been forced to take in a family member or support a family outside the home, for example, or a ton of legal bills or health or uncovered medical expenses. Those are the types of extreme special circumstances that financial aid officers will allow you to submit to them in order to reevaluate your eligibility and your resources and your ability to pay for college. So that doesn't happen for the most part until the spring. However, if you played early decision and you only have one offer back, let's say you get in and you only have one offer back, that's the time to negotiate it. You may not be able to use other offers from other colleges because you're precluded from using those. But if you have special circumstances, then by all means, that's when you should proffer those to these college financial aid offices. And by the way, if you don't get them to budge as much as you were hoping, in that case, you can actually walk away from your early decision application. You have a financial out. It's right there in black and white. It's not even in fine print. When you sign the early decision agreement, you'll see that in that very brief early decision paragraph that parents, guidance counselors, and kids all are parties to. Okay, so those are the three things I want to talk about today. Now let's go to the questions. What should a sophomore be doing now? Okay, I think the biggest thing that sneaks up on parents a lot is, and kids, is they don't realize that all the stuff they're doing, not just academically, but non-academically, that also gets weighted into the decision on whether to admit someone or deny someone. So if you're doing the same stuff that everyone else is doing in the grade, you're not going to stand out when you apply to college in a year and a half. And you are one of 20,000 or 50,000 or 70,000 kids who have the same grades, the same scores. So if I were to reduce my advice for what a sophomore should be doing now, of course, you should be doing, great academically, taking the hardest classes possible. It's still too early to prepare for the SAT or the ACT. I would do that over the summer. But but my main pithy statement would be think atypical. So it's typical to be in a club. It's atypical to form a club. It's typical to, well, it's not so typical to have a job, but that's pretty cool. But it's atypical to start a business. It's typical to be involved with something like Scouts, Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. It's atypical to go all the way to Gold or Eagle, those types of things. So that would be my best advice I could give. Thank you for that question. Okay, we got these. Website is almost done. Oh, cool. I think I know who that is, but it's not displaying properly here. Kim Alex, are the emails coming to the parent or the student? You got to check both. It depends on what you put in on the financial aid forms. But I would definitely check student email and parent email. Deb Sperling, do colleges ask for your year-to-date income for the year your child is a senior? No. Meaning at the time they send you an offer. So on the CSS profile, so Deb has a daughter who's graduating 2022. Your 2020 income is going to be the main thing on the financial aid forms, but on the CSS profile, it does ask, what are your projections for 2021? And in general, we try to keep that low, reasonable, but we try to give them a low number. I think those are usually blown off, those numbers, but they do ask for projections at the time of filing. So in October of 21, they're going to ask you about your projections for 22. Deb. Do colleges, still funny, do colleges look at class ranking from the end of junior year or middle of senior year when they make their actual decisions? They look at the transcripts primarily as of the end of junior year, but they will supplement that usually with grades from the first quarter. Christina Albano, do unusual expenses include having a second child entering college? That is not unusual, but that is baked into the financial aid equation because one of the questions on the FAFSA and on the CSS profile is how many children will you have in college? So it's not special, but it's considered. Trying to figure out whether or not to wait to appeal the financial aid offer we get in the spring for current freshmen or try to get ahead of it from now. No, I would wait because that's considered. Gail Madigan, after filing the CSS, why would some schools ask specific questions over others? So that's a great question. Why would some college out of 8 want a copy of your tax returns? Or why would a school want to know how much of your assets are retirement funds? It's not like we can take out retirement funds now. Well, actually you can, you're just penalized. But yeah, colleges have their own guidelines, their own resources that vary. Some are a lot more generous than others. Some colleges ask all kinds of extra supplemental intrusive questions, like how much credit card debt do you have? What's the make and model of the cars that everyone drives in the household, et cetera. They're trying to, the colleges that have money are really trying to see what you do with your money. That's, I guess that's the main thing, but it varies and they can do whatever they want because they're not bound by any sort of uniform set of guidelines. I forgot to add one more thing that I'm just going to throw in here. Another special circumstance, or another, I should say, form of appeal would be if your financial aid offer that you actually received is widely divergent from the one you expected. And the way that you can claim that you expected a certain number is by completing and printing out a net price calculator. So College Board has a net price calculator, which I believe is the most reputable one. But each college also has by law, they're required to post a net price calculator. The issue is that the calculators aren't uniform and standard either. That's why I just remembered that, because I was talking about something else. And they produce widely discrepant types of responses. So some, and it's garbage in, garbage out. So some net price calculators will ask for income. Some will ask about retirement contributions, which is more accurate, plus income. Some don't ask about assets at all, which is not accurate. Some ask about GPA and other academic information, which is accurate in terms of helping you figure out merit aid. So if you're planning early decision, for example, I would have a net price calculator print out handy in case that is a number that is much better than the actual offer that you get. And your argument can be, well, I did a net price calculator and I was sort of expecting, I know they're not written in stone, but I was expecting to get something close to this and you're giving us 0. like, what the heck? Can you please, explain that? So that's another one. It's not necessarily going to be a, I don't know what the right word is. It's not going to be a panacea, but it's good evidence that you can provide to them of why you applied there and what you relied on. And then it's up to the financial aid office or the admissions office to say, well, that's, we don't stand by those or something like that. But I would do that. Use the net price calculators, preferably the one from the College Board, but each college has to provide something like that on their website by law. Okay. Yeah, most of the net price calculators provided by the colleges are garbage. That's been my experience also. So I would say use them, and then whatever the best one is, print them out, and whatever the best one is that you can use to your advantage in a negotiation or an appeal, that's the one I would rely on. So if it's from the college's own website and it's garbage, but it's a much more favorable number, then use that, because then you can say, well, this is your own calculator. All the information I provided you is when I ultimately filed my financial aid forms, it's basically the same as what I put on the net price calculator. So whatever works, use it to your advantage. Okay. All right. So that was about a half hour. I want to thank everyone for being part of our community here. If you're not a client, you want more information on sort of how to dip your toe in the water, you can go to lockwoodinnercircle.com, or you can go to our website, lockwoodcollegeprep.com. And everyone, thanks for being part of our community. It's going to be an interesting year next year. 2020 was interesting. I think 2021 is also going to be pretty interesting. Keeping my fingers crossed. And I wish everyone happy holiday season. And good luck with everything, all of you seniors, as you start hearing back from colleges, and parents, as you start hearing back not only on admissions, but also financial aid. I wish everyone the best of luck. And again, Pearl and I really enjoy having you part of our little college guru nation here. So have a great month. Have a great new year. And we'll catch up with you next year. Take care.